It's me, it's myself and my wife, spouse, other partner. And here's what we want to try to accomplish, which is, hey, financially be strong, be able to do the things that we want to do in life, have the freedom and flexibility to then say, we can travel when we want, and we can set systems up to do that.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. Welcome to Scratch Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Jeremy Goodrich, and today we have something really special for you. We're starting a brand new series, and I couldn't be more pumped about it. The series is called Crossroads. We brought in business coach, serial entrepreneur David Quick to serve as co-host and business coach extraordinaire. David has run businesses, scaled businesses, sold businesses, and now he coaches a select group of clients and helps them build the business of their dreams. So David, thank you so much for being with us.
Jeremy and McKenzie, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, so David has agreed to come on these special episodes of Scratch and do actual coaching sessions with our guests. So on each episode, the guest will bring a clear crossroads they're facing. It could be a specific decision or a group of decisions directed at a tangible goal. And David, with my help, will talk through the scenario with the guest and offer ideas for clear forward steps and why he's suggesting them. Are you guys ready to get started?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we realized that asking a business owner to come on a podcast with a crossroads in their business is really asking them to take a risk, to share the inner working of what they do and how they do it. So it made sense for the first guests to be us, me and McKenzie.
Hello.
We are going to talk about a specific crossroads in our business, Shine Insurance Agency. So in this episode, David will be coaching us. So I'm really excited.
Me too.
I am as well.
Okay. So David, why don't you jump in and just talk about the structure of the conversation that we're going to have here today?
Sure. Before I do that, I thought worth noting in my intro, it made it sound like, hey, nothing but success. And that's nothing further from the truth. Plenty of failure along the way. So that always helps me frame some of my experience and say, hey, let's not go down a path I've failed at multiple times. So from a coaching philosophy perspective, I always look and say, well, and it's in the name of our company, how do we help people thrive? And to each of us, that's a different definition. Some may say, well, I want a $4 million business. I want an $8 million business. I want the ability to live the life I want outside the business. And it really becomes, what's that mean for you guys? So we'll dive into that a little bit. And then from there, look and say, well, what's going really well toward that thriving? And then what are some of your challenges? And really, from an executive coach perspective, that's where we want to spend time saying, well, how do we move and motivate, give you ideas, ask the right questions, and get you to move on that path in a way that says, here's somebody that doesn't have the same viewpoint so they can see alongside you and ask some of the tough questions you may not even think about asking, and offer a layer of accountability and suggestion that you may not have on your own.
Awesome. So what we're going to do at the beginning of all these episodes is just kind of intro the business so that our listeners can understand what the heck is going on with this business and throw right out some great things that are going on with the business. Obviously, everyone we bring in is going to be a business that's having successes, is successful, and just has a crossroads that they just want to talk about. So McKenzie, do you want to do the intro or do you want me to do the intro?
Yeah, I'd be glad to do the intro.
Cool.
So Shine Insurance Agency is an independent insurance agency in Bloomington, Indiana. We focus on helping local business owners and homeowners make sure that they've got all of the protection that they need so they can have peace of mind. We thrive on helping people change the way they feel about insurance. So we really try to educate people through the process and then help people understand how a claim is going to play out when they have one, since that's one of the most important parts of the insurance process and one of the times when people feel left alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the education part is key for us too, just really helping other people. You already said that, but to understand the process and really to make insurance different than it's been for people before.
And just from a background perspective, you've been doing this together how long?
5 years. We've had Shine Insurance Agency for 5.5 years now, and I've had 17 years of experience in the industry as an agent, and Jeremy was a teacher for 13 years before that, so education is in his background as well.
Awesome. And if you think about Shine today versus where you were 5 years ago, I'm sure there's a ton of success. If I simply said, hey, what are you most proud of? What would you say?
What I'm most proud of is that we really are following through with that original goal to change the way people feel about insurance. Like, it sounds kind of cheesy, but we keep coming back to the phrase and being like, yeah, that's a lens that's working.
Well, I think an awesome one, and McKenzie, you might have something to say, but when you think of and kind of the stereotypical view of insurance, it's, hey, there's somebody sleazy trying to sell me something. And always, if you can take that step back and say, well, we're just trying to help you and help prevent something catastrophic. And if something does happen, make sure you're protected. That's a much different conversation than let me sell you something. So your whole bent on education and how we do that and change the way people feel and think about insurance is powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The biggest success off the top is just continuing to be able to look through that lens and say, yeah, that's happening.
As you look and say, hey, we set out to do this, there's usually some other metric. So what's happened to revenue, growth of the business, client growth, that you would also say, hey, we're proud of.
I feel super proud of all of those things that you just mentioned. We set out a strategic plan when we started the business, and we were able to measure against that, and we hit the revenue goals that we set for ourselves. The expenses were higher than what we anticipated, but we've been able to adjust and predict a lot more accurately, and that feels really good. So it feels like we understand the workings of our business and have some control over it in a way that we didn't when we first started, but that we intended to have by now, and that's played out. So that feels really good. It feels like we know what we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
knock wood.
Yeah, I think the growth based on goals is funny. I never owned a real business before. I mean, I had lawn mowing business and stuff like that, but your first year, your growth obviously is like 100% or whatever. And then after, your second year, your growth is still like 60%, you're in these high percentages and you're like, okay, yeah, so we want to expect growth of about 60 to 70% every year. So that was one of the things I learned, like my percentage growth over the course of the first few years and growth expectations was just sort of off from where your business is going to be for the rest of its career, I guess.
Well, I'm curious. I spend a lot of time with business owners and these expectations. Have you found yourselves, when you set an expectation, landing near there?
Yes.
It's an interesting exercise. If you think about that and say, well, we only want to grow 20% next year, guaranteed you only grow 20% next year, instead of some mindset, and I've lived through this personally, that says, well, every year we're going to double.
Yeah.
And that gets really difficult as you grow, but it also changes your mindset and what's required to hit an expectation.
Yeah.
And so it's a powerful exercise to think about, where do we want to take the business? What's possible? What makes us feel somewhat uncomfortable? And what would that require? And is it consistent with what we want, meaning thriving? So if it's not, if you say, well, I could double the business this year, but it's going to require me spending 80 hours a week, and I have a life outside this work that I really want to be able to afford, but also have that opportunity to live a real life, then that's not thriving.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go down that path, but I think it's interesting to look at that expectations for your listeners and say, hey, there could be something in that in terms of how I'm setting my own expectations for the future.
And I think there is an important part of what we've decided thriving is, and it isn't like huge exponential growth. There's been no point in our evolution at Shine where we've been like, we just want to blow this thing up. It's always been like, we want to have growth, solid growth that fits into our expectations of how finances work and all that. And we want to be happy in our life. And so we've been growing steadily, and we want to continue to grow steadily. There's been no point where we're like, we want 10 shines in the next 3 years and, we're going to just blow this thing up. It's just not where we're at.
I have to say, Jeremy would have those kind of ideas a lot more often if it were just him. So there's an element of balance that we bring to each other that maybe sometimes I hold him back a little bit.
And some of that may be healthy. I think if you look at, and we could talk roles and responsibilities, all those things. So we've danced around this thing called thriving and said, hey, here's our business, here's where we've been and where we're going. If you step back and say, well, what is a definition of thriving for the two of you? If you've thought about it that way, or think, here's what would be ideal from this business. If this business over the next 3, 5, 10 years did this for us, and we were able to live this life, what would that be?
Well, the things that we always talk about are a balance of work and life goals, like most business owners, I would imagine, do. So outside of the business, having a comfortable life financially, being able to continue to pay things off, have more financial freedom for the future, be able to invest for our retirement, all of those kind of things are important to us. And we've got goals around that. Travel is important to us. So being able to travel once a quarter is ideal. We're living that now. We could probably have some adjustments to that as we've got more financial stability, but I think we're pretty satisfied in that regard right now. And me having time with being able to run the household in the way that I want to is really important to me, and that's something that we've been able to achieve and feels really, really good.
Thriving for me is all those things that you just described, like our family is strong, that McKenzie has a mix of work and home that is a different kind of mix than I have. I can let work run my brain all day long, all week long, all weekend long. And that's the adjustment I have to make, is back off of that. But there's some level of it that I'm okay with. Thriving to me is being here a fair amount and working a fair amount. And hopefully that work is creative. I think that's more fun. And for McKenzie, the work-life balance is a lot more balanced. And so thriving means to be able to let both of us have that in a way that's healthy.
Yeah.
And I think thriving is getting to be creative in our work. I think that the crossroads that we're going to bring up here is how to find systems, how to be able to scale so that I'm not doing the work I hate. I think that there's a lot of business owners that say, I get to do the stuff I love and I hire other people to do the stuff I don't. And I'm not sure that's where we're at yet, but I would like to be there. That does feel like thriving to me at some point.
Awesome. And I think your kind of definition is a consistent one with a lot of business owners that have this type of business, meaning, hey, it's me, it's myself and my wife, spouse, other partner, and here's what we want to try to accomplish, which is, hey, financially be strong, be able to do the things that we want to do in life, have the freedom and flexibility to then say, we can travel when we want, and we can set systems up to do that. So that's admirable, and it sounds like you're doing good things, probably a lot different than you were year one. And that's always kind of a constant reflection as you look at your business and look forward, saying, hey, are there subtle refinements? And we've done that. And Melissa and I, as business partners, one of ours is to travel more, and we've done that consistently more and more every year. And it's even to the point where we go, great, it's on the schedule, it's on the calendar, here's where we're going, and we have it planned out almost a year ahead. And it's been good for us. And it allows us to say that's the important stuff that we want in our work-life balance, to say, how do we do that? So on the flip side, if you said, hey, here's somewhere where we want to move toward thriving and we're not seeing that, or here's an issue that we're stuck, we know we could be doing better, be more effective, move toward this thriving, what comes to mind for each of you?
Not getting our personality out of the center of the business, but getting like our day, some of the things that we do every day out of the center. Like I had said before, for example, we're recording this podcast right now. Like we don't have anyone on the phones answering the phones. Like that doesn't feel like a healthy, thriving thing to be doing for this period of time. We lost an employee 6 months back and decided to cancel a vacation because we just couldn't see how the business ran without us and without that person there. I think those are small examples of things that we want to be able to fix so that we can get to this thriving point.
Yeah, it feels like we're this really lean, mean machine, and it's been great to be that way this entire time, and it's what we've needed to do, and we've been able to continue to take exceptional care of people and each other. And we have the ability to go to the next level now, and we're just not exactly sure how to do that. And we want to be careful and do it the right way because of the experience of, hiring someone and really loving them and investing, and things shift and everybody understands that. And at the same time, when you've got such a tight-knit little group, it feels like a way bigger deal to take on a new person than it would if there were 10 of us here.
Clearly makes sense. And if you look at, just so that the audience understands that, is it just the two of you? Do you have other employees?
There are Jeremy and I, and then we have 2 part-time employees.
And so is this, hey, do I need more part-time help? Do I need a full-time person here? What's kind of the, I'll call it, origin of that challenge? Or is it, hey, we just know there's things the two of us don't want to do and we're not sure we have the resource here to do it? Or the financial wherewithal just to commit and do that. So if you had to kind of answer that question, which is, where does this issue lie?
So in the insurance world, and maybe a lot of businesses, there are essentially two roles. There's the people that talk with clients and offer, how insurance works and educate people and put together policies and have that personal relationship with the clients. And then there's the people that do a lot of the background work and make all the billing and the paperwork and all those kinds of things work. And I bring it up because we have this conversation all the time. What is the right way to hire, and how do we bring people on? We've done a pretty good job of bringing support folks on because we are the agents. We're the people who talk to everyone. And so we've got a lot of support on the support side. So I think that the next step is to bring in people who actually talk with clients.
So we've got one employee right now who is going to be moving up into that position later on this year. And we're sort of figuring out what exactly is left over and what we each no longer want to do that we could move over to that person. So we're kind of going through that process right now, where that person will fit, what will be left over, if anything, how can we allocate that. We have some back office outsourcing support also, not employees, but they do just the paper processing stuff. Could we give them more? That kind of thing is part of the conversation.
In that definition for each of you of thriving, when you look out to the future and say, hey, I'm hearing there's this, I'll call it Crossroads. We could move and bring on more sales, customer-facing help. We could offload more and spend some of our time there. If the two of you look and say, well, here's what I want, meaning my role in this business is to continue to foster customer-facing relationships and not do any of that back office work, which is the role I have in my company. I do not like the mundane, repeatable, here's the work behind the scenes. I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
So it becomes, is that the role I want? And then there's also a stretch in the organization. Say, if we're going to grow, we also can't be the only people doing that.
Right.
So is it some of both of that? And if you look at your individual roles, if I said, Jeremy, what do you want to do? And McKenzie, what do you want to do? What comes to mind first before we go into those other things?
I like the administrative aspects of the business. I enjoy taking care of making sure that everything's running smoothly. I kind of feel like the mom of the business, and I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy my relationships with clients, and I feel that I'm very helpful and do a lot of good work. And I don't feel like I want to take on a lot of new clients because I feel like there's a relationship that I can only have so many of those in a way. So that I feel like that kind of holds me back, but it is just what it is, and that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, on the McKenzie side, like the mom of the business totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And like working with great clients, you
Yeah.
know, specifically great clients and the ones that she loves to work with. And
Yeah.
the question is, where do we see ourselves moving? What do we like to
yeah.
do, right? And I like to talk to people. I like to communicate with folks, whether that's on an insurance level or that's on other stuff. I mean, this podcast is an example of something that I love to do that I think is good for, you know, the growth of the business and all that kind of stuff. So doing more talking to people is where I'd like to go, and doing less paper pushing, which is probably 50% of what I do now.
All right. So there's a consistent path with each of you then to say, McKenzie, maintain kind of the relationships I have, keep the business on an administrative level running, handle, I'm hearing, all of that back office support and say, hey, we have a network in which we can stretch and move there. So the challenge is, and I'm hearing, and I want to make sure that that's clear before we move forward, is how do I grow the business? How do I move and find new client opportunities, leads, conversations that we can bring into the business and add? And the question is that the two of you? Is that someone else? And when you think about that, is that the challenge that you're looking at? So how do we grow the business, bring in new potential clients? Because it sounds like you have the infrastructure to maintain what you have fairly adequately and are doing a good job there.
Yes, that would be correct.
So when you look at that challenge, which is how do we attract and bring in new clients, what comes to mind? Jeremy, in what you described, you go, hey, I want to do more of that. Or, hey, I want to do the part where I'm meeting and doing, but I don't know if I want to have this sales responsibility.
I think I understand your question. So like what niche community, what group of ideal clients, or just what actions am I taking as a person?
Yeah, more about your action. So, hey, is it I'm willing to meet, network, find, but I don't want to sell and bring in new clients. So I'm trying to find out, hey, is it I really want to do this, go bring new clients into the business, or there's something short of that?
I think meet, network, and find is probably the top. And maybe there's some bias there because I think that's the deepest connected part of the brand, right? And so I feel protective of it. So there may be something to pull out there, but I think that part's great. And then I love taking care of the insurance side, but if I had people inside our agency that I trusted, had trained, had brought into the space, and I know when I talk with someone and I say, hey, I'm going to connect you with so-and-so, and she's going to really take amazing care of you, and then that person follows through with the expectations that I've set, that feels okay to me.
So when you look forward, and we'll just use 2019 as an example. If you said, here's kind of our goal for 2019, either from a new business potential or goal or a total business goal, is that where the gap or the rub is, where you say, hey, we got to bring in this to meet the goal, and we're not sure where that's going to come from?
No.
Right, you know where it's going to come from.
Yeah, it feels like we're going to continue to grow with new clients. Right. I don't feel concerned about that. Knock on wood again, but...
Right.
No, I think that our growth problem is internal. It's how to grow inside to support what comes in from the outside.
Got it. All right. And so is that then this network I'm hearing that we could lean on and do more, and that may have at a higher cost than a full-time employee? Or is it a question of, well, when do we bring that full-time employee on? Do we have enough work?
I think the thing about bringing on full-time employees is you start to build a culture, and there's a part of me that feels like a culture is important at some point. And with the limited amount of folks that we have, I think we take great care of our employees, and I think our employees enjoy the work they do, whether it's freelance or here in the space. But I think growing a culture is important. So I think
you're feeling like you're ready to add to the team here physically in the office.
I think so. I think that feels like kind of the right step.
Yet there's hesitation. So what's causing the pause?
I think what's causing the pause is knowing that we could probably continue to be at the center for a little bit longer. Well, I don't know. What's causing the pause for you?
No, I mean, finish your thought. I think you can't stop there.
I think, you look at profit margin and stuff like that, and you say, well, we could bring on someone and pay X amount, and that's going to cut into profits. And for the first 3 or 4 years, I think we were not making a ton of money, and that was okay with us. We knew exactly how it was going to work. And in the past year, it's kind of come to a point where it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is starting to bear fruit. And so that creates that question, okay, as soon as it starts to bear fruit, do we turn around and put that back into the business with a new employee or whatever, or do we try and stretch that as long as possible and enjoy some of the bared fruit? Is that a word? I don't know.
And McKenzie, is there anything different that's causing you to pause?
Yeah, it's just a relationship when you take somebody on. And so there's a vulnerability to that. It's just like any other relationship. You get to know a person, you invest in them, you trust them, you have a vision for where things are going to go, and it may or may not pan out that way. And so I think there's a little bit of a hesitation in that regard too. Whereas if you have some people who are doing back office work and it's outsourced and, they decide they don't like their job and they churn through, well, that's okay because it's a team and you're working with the team, not the person.
Yeah. So there's a less personal feel to that says, hey, we brought someone into our family. And yeah, I'll talk about that. I think that's the right approach, which is it is bringing somebody into our family. That this is something that should be thought about with that seriousness, which is, hey, we don't do this willy-nilly. This isn't, and all your talk about culture is important. So I'm hearing two things, which is, hey, there's this, are we ready financially? And are we ready to take on that culture piece? And I spent a lot of time in my coaching talking about, well, we've created stories around that. And so each of you have. You've each created a story that says, hey, I got to make sure because we're bringing this person into our family. And That's one side of it, which is there's a downside, or what I call a non-positive, powerful story, and could say, we'll create a powerful one, which we'll find a superstar. We'll bring a person in, and we're going to be happy, and they're going to work here the next 20 years. And that person will dramatically change our business.
Yeah.
That's a powerful story that says, hey, that help can move and say, yeah, we just need to make sure that that person we bring on is that.
Yeah.
And it changes our view of what could happen negatively to one that says, well, here's what could happen positively. And it's more important to, one, find and create the story that moves you toward power, and then say, great, well, what are all the things I need to tick off to make sure that that happens?
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the financial piece, I think you have to look and say, well, what does that mean? How many hours? How do we start? And it may be this is a part-time to full position, and I'm already moving toward here's potential answers. But again, there's a way to think about the story, which is right now, the story is preventing us from taking action. There's a worthy dialogue for the two of you to say, well, how do we connect the two things, which is, hey, I'm worried financially, and hey, we got to bring in this new family member. Mm-hmm. And that you could create something that says, well, we're going to foster a new employee for a little while to see how it goes. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to spend time to make sure they're right for us. And we're going to start with somebody that has the ability to spend time with us and flex into more. When you go out to hire, that's the place you start with, which is this is what we're looking for. You know, we're looking for somebody that's half-time, part-time, some number of hours that wants to grow into a full-time role because we're a growing, exciting insurance company that's looking for this type of person. And if we create, again, and I'll use story again, a powerful story for that person, they're out there and they'll find it and they'll be compelled and they'll come and join you guys. Mm-hmm. So worthy of those two things. And when you hear that and you go, all right, well, yeah, maybe there is some of that. Does some of that resonate for each of you? That, hey, I'm worried about having to bring somebody in and let them go, McKenzie?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And for you, Jeremy, is it well, what's the hurdle? What does this mean for us financially?
Yeah, I think it's part of the letting go thing too. I think that the financial thing, you know, I can see through that pretty quickly. I mean, you bring, you know, from what I've heard from other businesses and what I've seen in a lot of business, you bring someone on and they bring in more business. And as long as you're doing the right things and building the right systems and taking good care of people, it all works out in the end. So that, while it feels like a risk, it doesn't feel as big of a thing. I just always look back at the systems of the whole thing and be like, okay, how are we bringing this person in? Why are we bringing them in? What role are they going to play? How are we going to make sure our space is like great for them and they want to stay for a long time? Those kinds of questions. I don't think I answered your question at all. But
no, I think you did. I think you, and that's where I was going to push that. The financial side, we often look at that and say, well, here's what the annual salary is, and here's what I'd bring them in, and this is what it means to my business. And instead, I have you bite off the first 30 days and say, well, what's the real exposure in the first 30 days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's usually not very much. Usually doesn't mean that much to the business. And it says, yeah, I have to use that resource to change the direction and momentum of my business. And if I do that, and rest assured, if you find a great person and bring them in, it will change what each of you do in the business.
Yeah.
It will say, hey, I have more trust. I have more open opportunity to go create new, to work on other things, to have, again, move toward that thriving definition for us and do it in a way that says we have a new powerful team member here that's helping us move toward that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, one of our goals is to create an environment for people to have a great job that they enjoy. And so that would be an opportunity to fulfill that with a person instead of outsourcing.
Yeah.
And I think, again, if you go back to that whole story line, you can say this for us moves and answers that. It answers this ongoing need to say, how do we grow? And it moves you in that path. So we could talk about kind of that whole process. If I challenged you and said, this is the biggest question mark in our business today, is it?
The growth of staff, the kind of growth of staff. I think so.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's not something else that you go, well, we'd solve this and then we'd have this bigger mountain to climb.
No.
Right. Good. And so that's always just a checking for me, because sometimes we look and go, well, here's something I'm willing to talk about. And I'll challenge you guys that and say, yeah, but there's also something that I'm not, that's hidden over here in the side, elephant in the room. And the two of us know it, we know it, and we're just avoiding that. That's great. And then it says, so how do I move into this, expand my staff in a way that we're comfortable? And more and more of it's becoming, how do we find right person? How do we ensure that this is right for us? For you guys, if you looked and said, here's what we know we want, meaning they would fit our culture if they're this, this, and this, what comes to mind?
Like cool, funky Bloomington.
Ready to help.
I think that's a good combination, actually. You know, ready to help, servant mentality, an educator, someone who knows how to teach. It's funny how many entrepreneurs used to be educators. And I think there's something to that, right? The knowing how to teach someone something.
Someone who's had their own business would be a very big plus.
So you have 3 bullets you could have in a job description. And I would urge you to say, hey, let's record those. Let's say, hey, funky, cool Bloomington, ready to help others now, and potentially owned your own business at one point. And I think that's all great, because particularly when you start to look at that, there's a great opportunity for also then we're looking initially for part-time, if that's what it is. And again, we could spend time and say, is this a part-time, full-time? And how do you get comfortable with full-time, and say, just bite that off? Or say, we're looking for either part-time or full-time, and see who shows up.
So we've hired great people and they've turned around and left because they didn't like insurance.
I think that's a story that we tell. Back on this.
That's interesting. Maybe that is a story that we tell. I mean, that's certainly the story I tell myself. And maybe it has more to do with how we presented the job or the role.
I think one person wasn't cut out for the office life. I think one person had an opportunity that was better for various reasons. And I think another person had another opportunity that was better for various reasons. And
so then what are we doing to not be the better option, right? Is the question I come up with.
Yeah, or maybe, or in this whole hiring piece, and we could spend a lot of time there, I look and say, the very best I've seen from a job ad, and all of you think about this, was Shackleton's Antarctic expedition.
Oh, right.
First line is men wanted. Second line is return unlikely. And that premise says, are we describing with real candor what to expect here, both positive and negative, and say, you know, if you're in an environment that says, we expect you to work really hard and a lot of hours, say that.
Yeah.
Because when they get here, that's what they're going to experience. So with real openness and candor, describe what's here, and describe, here's the culture, here's how we are. And if it's funky, cool Bloomington and we want that, say that. And then those that aren't, go, you're not right for us. And, you know, we spent some time and got to know each other here. My whole view of that is you're just creating a magnet. You're creating a magnet that says, this is us, this is what I'm looking for. Describe it, and then put energy into that magnet that makes it more and more compelling over time, and that you create your vibe, that this is who we are. And that over time it becomes, you know, I joke and say Sesame Street. You know, one of these is not like the other, and we can point and we can see that person doesn't belong here. They're not part of what we all are here. And the more, again, that you put energy toward that magnet and create what it is, it becomes more and more clear, more and more compelling, more evident to everyone that that's what we are. And fit and question of fit becomes almost instantaneous, that people, even just when they read your job post, go, I'm compelled to go there. That's right for me. And it's okay when they read your job post, they go, I want nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, they go, that's great. If you can get people to say, I'm repelled by that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Find those who are compelled, write that. And, you know, you have the first 3 bullets, and then say, well, what is in the work that would compel some people and repel others? And we can get deep into personality traits. You know, if this is a perfectionist job, meaning you need to be incredibly detail focused, anal retentive, I put that in the job posting.
Yeah,
so we want a cool, funky vibe, but you also got to be one of those people that can't sleep at night without order.
Yeah.
If that's what's required. Yeah. And if instead it's, I just need you to be social and bubbly, say that.
Yeah.
But whatever's required for the job, say, hey, let's get comfortable, describe it, spend a little time. You know, that's the guys for you guys for an hour saying, what are we looking for? And then go put the posting out and see who shows up and say, slow, deliberate, who do we like? And the other side is, hey, we'd love to pay you for 4 hours and come see whether or not you like it. You don't have to start with, we're doing anything other than, hey, we want you to come do some work. And again, slow and deliberate. Do they like the work? Do they like our vibe? Do they want to be here? Yeah. And just extend the interview and say, hey, I know you have another job or you have another part-time job. What one of these time blocks in the next 2 weeks would work for you, where we could pay you to come work for 4 hours and just write a 1099. You're not employing them. You're saying, hey, here's the money, and we're going to watch you work and see whether you like it or not.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So simple little things like that, I think you can move. And if those are the hurdles from having you start, I would push and say, start, write a job ad. Who walks in the door? Who do we like? And more often than not, if we do that, we'll say, oh, well, I found somebody that can help me. And if you go through that slow, deliberate process and have somebody here that can help, look and go, well, what would that mean to our business?
Yeah.
And for a moment, I would have you to answer that. If we found somebody that was great, dedicated, loyal, part-time to full-time, and they said they were going to spend the next 10 years here and were awesome, what would it mean to each of you?
Freedom.
I think the answer freedom makes a lot of sense. I think that it would mean next steps in a lot of ways. It's like back to the beginning of the conversation, right? It's like, how do we take it to the next level? We know that we're taking great care of the people that we have now, but that's not going to last forever. So if that person walked in the front door, I guess it would be relief a little bit, to know that you've got that team member. I mean, I was sitting down with a business owner yesterday and he was talking about, he's got 10 to 12 employees, I think, and was talking about how one had been there for 22 years, one had been there for 15. The most recent hire he had was 8 years ago. And I was just thinking, wow, to be at that point where you have a team, you all are a big family, all members of the team, and it all works well together. And that was a feeling I got from him, and I admired that. So someone walking in the front door that had that kind of potential, I just would feel a little relieved, I guess.
So if I go back to the story, I could create the story that said, well, so why wouldn't you start? Why wouldn't that be a priority?
Fear.
Yeah. And so I think, again, that becomes a story. And we can create one that says this could be the most powerful thing we've ever done for our business if we do it right. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes start it, slow, deliberate. We've talked some just about personality assessments. There's plenty you could do there.
Yeah. What are your recommendations?
Yeah. So, in this whole, we could get really deep into the whole hiring process for me, but it starts with a compelling job description. It starts with a process that's well documented in either Top Grading or Who, which is this whole premise of thread of reference checking. Mm-hmm. And it's a interview style that just says we're going to walk through work history. In that work history, I want to know who you worked for. And if it was, hey, my first boss that I can remember is Jeremy Goodrich, I'm writing down Jeremy Goodrich and say, how do you spell Goodrich? Mm-hmm. And then in that interview process, I'm saying, well, if Jeremy were here, what would he say he admires most about you, and what would he caution me on? What did you like most about working for Jeremy, like least about? And I just talk about wherever my hair on the back of my neck stands up a little bit, then I ask deeper questions.
Yeah.
And sometimes to those questions I get, well, he expected me to come to work every day.
I am thinking about myself and one job from a long time ago, and I'm laughing.
Yes. And that whole thing, it makes the applicant sit up a little taller, tell you the truth. So then through that process, I'd say, well, if we're going to move forward, Tina, I'm going to want to talk to Jeremy, and I want you to schedule that call. So different than most reference checks, I give the thread of reference check ever pressing through the interview process and then actually do reference checks. And different than give me a list of names, I've gone through your work history and say, I want to talk to these 3 people. And then I say, Tina, schedule a call with those 3 people. One of them is Jeremy, and I want him to call me in the next week. I want you to arrange that. So I put it on them.
Yeah.
That's one. And then I'm big on personality assessments, skill assessments, which we talked a little bit on. So if there's a work thing you need them to do, think about how do we create a small test to test some of that. Mm-hmm. So do they need to be able to add? If they need to be able to add in this work, see if they can add.
Definitely.
If they need to be able to fill out forms with a piece of information and that's something simple to train, I would say, hey, we're going to pay you for 4 hours. I'm going to show you how to fill out these forms. And then I'm going to have you fill out forms for 2 hours, if that's what their job is.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to. So I've taken that all the way to the ultimate. And my favorite is I was helping a commercial concrete company in D.C., and he took this all to heart. He said, I'm going to start telling them final candidates come to lay concrete. Mm-hmm. And he said, I pay them for 4 hours after final interview, and we watch them lay concrete.
Yeah.
Because if they can work well and lay concrete in the first 4 hours with some training, great, we'll bring them on. If not, I'm not going to hire them. Yeah. I go, brilliant.
That makes total sense.
On the personality assessment side, it's if you're looking for an anal retentive bookkeeper, find an anal retentive bookkeeper. If you're looking for a high-power salesperson, find a high-power salesperson. And personality assessments, they've been out there for the last 50, 60 years. There's more and more of them every day. Incredibly predictive, powerful. And if anyone wants help there, they can find us on the show notes, and I'm happy to help them walk through that. So
cool. So we came to you with a Crossroads, and our Crossroads was about scalability. How do we grow from where we're at, kind of a mom and pop, to a larger business? Do you still think that is our Crossroads?
I think that the real crossroads isn't, hey, when, hire, how do we scale? It's this, are we ready to take that next leap and have a real full-time employee? You could take that and say, I'm going to bite that whole thing off, and I'm going to do that with incredible vigor. And we could spend time on that. And it's really what's going to help me move toward thriving today, tomorrow, 6 months, a year from now, 10 years from now. And I would urge you to say, yeah, we got some fear there. And how do we overcome that fear? And we can step into that. We can put a toe in the water, or we could say, hey, do it. And, I think the real thing would be, well, what are you going to pay this employee? And what does full-time pay look like? And what does that mean financially? And you'll quickly go, well, 30 days of that isn't going to hurt us, most likely. And then the other side of that is, well, can we find somebody that's great?
Yeah.
And I would say start interviewing people and find somebody that's great.
Okay.
And so I have one more question.
Yeah.
With the 30-day concept, do you explain that as you are hired and this is your 30-day, most people call it like a probation period. How do you describe that to the...
I'm probably different than most there. That 30-day thing is a mental thing for me.
Okay.
Indiana's a right-to-work state.
Right.
You can hire and fire, and I'm not advocating that. I would actually fall to some advice Simon Sinek says, which is you should look at every employee as they are now a family member,
Right.
Yeah.
and that you don't fire family members.
Yeah.
They're still in your family, and that your approach should be slow and deliberate, meaningful, thoughtful, take as much subjectivity out of the process as possible. We can spend more time there, but
Hire
so that
slow,
30,
fire fast.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And instead is create a definition of what you're looking for, write a job description that defines that with real, compelling, repelling language, bring people in that are that, and then again, have them come work for 4 hours, assess their skill, understand are they the right personality fit for the role, and then are they right for you guys culturally? And I always just use the 30-day mindset, which is I can always say this isn't working out. And most, if you go through that process, you're going to find, yeah, they're at least adequate. And you may go, they're not a superstar. I would challenge you to say, hey, get more comfortable finding superstar. And that becomes going through the process.
Right. Okay.
And looking at a bunch of candidates. That's the other thing is there's no rush I'm hearing from you guys to bring that person on, meaning, hey, we're existing today. We're doing well today. We're thriving today.
Yeah.
There's some things that we would like to change on a go forward, but there's not a pressing issue, which is we can't run the business. That's a different scenario.
Yeah.
Even there, many people will rush to and say, hey, fog a mirror, hire them. I say that's a bad formula. It has to be, particularly if you have poor performers, which we can get to another day, but an empty seat sometimes is better than a seat filled.
Yeah.
If it's wrong culture, wrong fit, can't do the job. The people here that are working hard and pulling hard would rather see you bring somebody on that can pull hard as well,
For sure.
than just put somebody in a seat and pay them. They almost resent it usually.
Absolutely.
So I think take that mindset, which is it doesn't have to be permanent, but we're going to act as if it is in terms of finding the right candidate. But I've had plenty of times where hired people in the first 30 days said, wow, this was a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, even using the things and the tips and tricks and processes that I advocate all the time, we're dealing with people. So there's nothing that is
Right.
foolproof.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So, I feel like that was really helpful. I think that was a lot of insight for us. I'm going to ask McKenzie in just a second, just if there's any other bubbling stuff there that she wants to address. But after that, we're going to actually head over to Patreon and we're going to have an after show a little bit. So we're going to break this down a little bit. We're going to see where we're all at and see what we're feeling.
A little debriefing.
And we're going to do a little debrief. And then we're going to play for the first time a game, 5 questions your employees never asked, but they should have. Again, where this is usually with our guests, but in this case, it's with McKenzie and I. So
I know number 3.
Thank you, David, as always. If folks want to find David, you can go to helpingbulls.com, find that personality profile he was talking about, hire him as a coach. Any of those kinds of things are right there at helpingbulls.com. If you want to find Shine Insurance Agency, you can find us at shineinsurance.com or on YouTube or other social media spaces. So thanks to all three of you. No, I'm one of the three. Thanks to the both of you for being on the show.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Special thanks to David Quick for taking the time to coach McKenzie and I on the show today. David is getting no payment out of this or anything like that. He's doing these shows out of the goodness of his heart, and we can't thank him enough. You can find his business and some free resources at helpingbulls.com. You can look in the show notes and click right there to get there as well. Contributors to this episode include the host, me, Jeremy Goodrich. Music, again, is by our good buddy, Mark Vinton. Editing is by editing superhero Christopher Lang. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's a couple of things we need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Scratch Entrepreneur on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please review the show. Write me an email. Review the show any way you want. Do it on iTunes and all those places, or just let us know what you like, especially about these Crossroads episodes. It's a brand new series. We're really looking forward to helping lots of business owners with on-air coaching. And we're wondering, do you like it? Are you interested? Do you want to be on the show? Let us know. Finally, please do share this show with friends if you can, and join us on the Scratch Entrepreneur Facebook group. We can't wait to see you there. Until the next time, have a wonderful day.